Mickey van der Ven, 23 points. He ruined a lot of content creators' FPL game weeks and a lot of engaged managers' game weeks. But for anyone that follows this series, he hopefully didn't ruin your game week because you want to be owning the highly owned players. Why do we keep saying own the highly owned players? Because if they have a good game week and you don't own them, it could seriously hurt your rank. So that was nice. To be fair, going into the last game week, I was on a red arrow of about -6, I think, because all the popular players, and my team's made of popular players, had just done really poorly. So I was resigned to getting maybe -6, 7 for the entire week. Then Mickey came up and turned it into a green and made a lot of other people's scores red. So that was nice for me, and for anyone who had Mickey van der Ven and played him, well done. It is difficult, psychologically it is difficult having players that are highly owned and are not performing, because you see the crowd selling them and you want to sell them, and there is a time to sell them, but you just need to be aware when they're still highly owned they can still hurt you. So it's difficult. It's definitely difficult. And to be fair, on Sunday before the game I was looking at several transfers I could be making, and all of the permutations included me getting rid of Mickey because he was being mass sold and I could see he wasn't going to be one of the most popular defenders, so I could afford to get rid of him. But after his 23 pointer, he's now getting bought in by loads, so I got to keep hold of him, but that's okay because at the moment I'm alright with him. So we'll start by looking at who are the popular players. We're currently looking at the players around the 500k rank because that's where I am. And across the x-axis is the ownership percentage and the y is the price. So right up here, the most expensive player is 100% owned basically, and that's Haaland. And you kind of have to own him. If you don't and he does well, it's going to hurt your rank. Last game week he blanked. So for those handful of players that didn't own him, that would have been a big victory for them. Anyone who captained somebody other than Haaland, they'd have felt good as well. But on the most game weeks when he does do well, that's going to hurt everyone who doesn't captain him. And then down here with 85% is Semenyo. Now he's a funny one in that he's highly owned, but he's away to Man City this game week. So there may be some managers thinking of benching him. And I have seen online 1 or 2 content creators thinking of moving him on for example, a Sarr from Palace. Sarr is likely to outscore him. Most midfielders are likely to outscore him. Most good midfielders are likely to outscore him this game week. But if he does well and you don't own him, he is going to hurt your rank. And then up here between 60 and 50%, we have Gabriel, around 60% ownership now. He's not quite a banker, but he's probably the best defender in the game. You absolutely want to have him if you can get to him without... Even if you had to take a hit, it may almost be worth it. But you want to try and work in the next game week or two, how can you get Gabriel in because his ownership's so high. And then we have João Pedro, currently 56.4% ownership, and it is decreasing fast. And I would actually quite like to sell him and maybe get in Mateta from Palace. So there's a number of forwards that are expected to score higher than Pedro because he's just not been performing. However, his ownership is still high. My prediction around my rank for the time the game week starts is about 56.4%. And that's based on the ownership around my rank plus allowing for the net transfers in and out and what I predict it's going to be by the game week start. So my feeling is I can't get rid of him unless he gets injured or something like that, just in case he does well. So if he gets 12 points and he's around the 50% ownership, that is going to hurt anybody who doesn't own him. Then we have a few players between 40 and 50%. So Van der Ven, he's now the second most highly owned defender, nearly 50%. And what we've seen is, of course, Thomas Frank now being the manager, they've obviously been working on set pieces. They've been making him a better player. You could argue they were lucky to get the clean sheets. That gave him another 4 points. But maybe he's going to be able to get a few more points in the coming game weeks. And the week before last, where he got 0 points, he was involved in an assist/goal that was offside with Kudos. So clearly he can get involved in some of the attacking things. But because his ownership's high, absolutely worth holding on to. Then we have next to midfielder Kudos. I think he's probably on the decline. We'll find out in a minute. But he's still high enough owned to hurt you if you don't own him and he does well. As is Senesi. Now, a lot of managers will bench him this game week, and the reality is I may well, because he's away to Man City, but he's highly owned. So if he does well, if he does a Mickey van der Ven this game week, that is going to hurt a lot of people. And then just below that, just below 40%, we've got Gahey at 39. And then Raya, he's getting very close to 40% ownership. So he would hurt you, and he keeps getting clean sheets, except he tends to get 6 points. So at 40% ownership, if you don't own him, 6 points, that's minus 2.4 points against you. So if you were wildcarding, it's probably quite possibly worth getting Raya. Absolutely not worth wasting transfers getting him in though, because any keeper would do, and he's only ever going to hurt you by 2.4 points. Once or twice this season, he may save a penalty, but you don't know that when it's going to come. He may get a bonus point, but generally, he's just a 6-pointer. And then also we have Reinders. He's another troublesome person that I'd really like to get rid of, but I just feel I can't at the moment because he's too highly owned, and they're at home to Bournemouth this game week, so he may get something. His minutes are reducing, but there's a risk in getting rid of him, and he's cheap at 5.6 million. And then there's another strike here, Voltamada. He's on the up, but not as much as who do you have? Mateta down here. He's increasing as well. He's getting massively hyped up online. Now, the predictor sites tend to prefer Sarr, who's a Palace midfielder. I can't remember if he's in the system or not. We'll find out in a minute. All this to say, this is a view of who the most popular players are. If your rank's not the same as mine, it'd be slightly different to this, but won't be massively different. And up here we have Salah. He's still being sold. He's up high because he's expensive, but he's getting sold. He did score last game week. That does not justify his price. But from game week 12, Liverpool do have better fixtures, so maybe his popularity will grow then. We're now going to look at the players, and I'm using predicted points from Solo Analytics. I don't get a kickback from me using them, but they're a big fun site to use. Links in the description below. So Raya, he is the most popular goalkeeper at the moment by a country mile, but his XP means his damage, if he got 4.6 points, which he won't, it's a damage of minus 1.8 if you don't own him. He's probably going to get 6, so he's probably going to hurt you by 2.4. My advice over the weeks has been, and I think I'll stick to it at the moment, if you've got a playing keeper, unless you absolutely hate him, don't waste a transfer on him. Just play him. And wait till you've got a wild card. Or if you've got 4 or 5 free transfers, then you could mess about with a keeper if you wanted to. If you were wild carding, Ray is probably the sensible keeper to get at the moment, but probably not the most fun. I think Pope may be better in the coming game weeks, but he's lower owned. If you don't own him, it doesn't matter. He's been brought in by net 13,000. Donnarumma's pretty flat, just 1,000, but Man City absolutely should be keeping some clean sheets, and he is a very good keeper. Then we have Vicario. He's been sold 31,000, but he did keep a clean sheet away to Everton. He'll be getting sold because 1, people are hopping over to Raya, and 2, the next 3 are Chelsea, United and Arsenal, and I guess people just don't fancy him for that. So on a wild card, I wouldn't get Vicario. If I had him, I wouldn't sell him. I wouldn't get Sanchez on a wild card. If I had him, definitely wouldn't be selling him. Okay, away to Spurs this game week. There's no love lost between those two teams. But after that, he's got Wolves and Burnley. He could get a clean sheet there. Roos for Sunderland. Sunderland defensively are very good. He's only 4.7 million. He's an absolutely fine keeper to have. Look at that, $1 million cheaper than Raya, and he may well score similar points. Then Petrovic, he's the cheapest on the page so far, 4.5 million. I wouldn't go buying him, but if he's who you've got, okay. Kelleher, same as Petrovic, 4.5 million. He's steady, net transfers of around 0. Pickford's down by 15,000, but they've got Sunderland, Fulham, the next 2. He could get a clean sheet there. I wouldn't be selling Pickford, but there's no way I'd be buying him either. And then Dubravko, who's the banker. He's up by net 1,000 so far this game week. Sits on your bench most game weeks, but he's a playing keeper. He's there if you need him. For the defenders, Gabriel by far the most popular defender. He is the most dangerous defender. He's possibly the best defender in the game, and his ownership's gone up by net 161,000 so far this game week. Absolutely worth having, absolutely worth playing. And next to Haaland, he's the player I've heard about people online talking about captaining the most this game week. Whether or not they will, I don't know, but they're certainly talking the town about captaining Gabriel. Then Mark Gahey, he's this high simply because he's so highly owned. Palace do have some nice fixtures coming up, but there's a Palace defender, for example, called Munoz, who is expected to score more than Gahey. However, Gahey's the one that's going to do the most damage at the moment on predicted points if you don't own him. So on a wild card, he's okay to get. I wouldn't be using a hit to bring him in, but he's absolutely fine to have. There's no way I'd be selling him if I had him. Then Van de Ven, he's gone up by 95,000 so far this game week. And remember, he started the game week being mass sold. Next 2 games aren't great, Chelsea, United, Arsenal. So if you don't own him, I'd say don't buy him. If I was wildcarding, I probably wouldn't bring him in. And I would just hope he doesn't do me any damage because I could easily get other players. But he's only 4.7 million, not a lot. He's fine to have, he's fine to hold. And this coming game week, I suspect quite a few teams will be playing him. And then Senesi, he's highly owned. He's good to have. He's away to Man City this game week, then away to Villa. But he could get defensive contributions. He's going to be first, I think, on a lot of managers' benches this game week. He's been slightly sold by 7,000. But he's a very good player to hold. Being highly owned, he's going to hurt you if he does well. He's going to hurt you a bit. His ownership's such that he's going to hurt you a bit if he does well. Then Timber, he's up by 148,000. Absolutely worth getting. There'd be a lot of managers selling, for example, Gyökeres, Arsenal forward, and getting in Timber, and then replacing Gyökeres with Mateta, which, from expected points scored, absolutely makes sense and is worth doing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely fine. The only thing is, Arsenal are away to Burnley this game week, and I think there's a reasonable chance that the attackers will be outscoring the defenders this game week, whereas often they seem to win by 1 or 2 goals, so the defenders are doing quite well, relatively speaking. But if you want to do Gyökeres to Mateta, which frees up a spot, so you can do even Van de Ven to Timber, some people would be doing that. It'd be psychologically difficult to do, but that's kind of all right. Then Munoz, very good player, 5.7, so 0.8 more expensive than Gahey, but is expected to get more points. He's very attacking, one of the most attacking defenders in the game. Very, very good choice to have if you can afford him. Virgil van Dijk's been dumped by 100,000 net so far this game week. Without Alisson in goal, Liverpool defensively are noticeably worse. We don't know when Alisson's going to be back yet. I know Andy from Let's Talk FPL, he's keeping hold of Virgil van Dijk because from game week 12 the fixtures are good. Personally, I think if I had him and I could afford the transfers, I would dump him and just get anyone else on the screen. Well, obviously Gabriel's much better, but even apart from him, I'd rather have any of the other defenders than Virgil van Dijk at the moment. But if you've got him, you want to hold him, that's fine. Then Calafiori, he's the least popular of these 3 Arsenal defenders. The Arsenal defenders are expected to get the best scores this coming game week of all the defenders on the screen. He's fine to have, 5.8 million, but Timber is more popular, so Timber would hurt you a bit more if you don't have him. Then Pedro Porro, he's falling, but he did get a clean sheet and an assist last game week, so he's only falling by 32,000. But of course, Van de Ven is 0.8 cheaper. Van de Ven's going to do you more damage. You absolutely don't need to worry about Pedro Porro at the moment. If you've got him, he's all right. Personally, I would rather have most of the other defenders on this screen at the moment than Pedro Porro. Would not take a hit to get rid of him though. Cucurella, he's down by 42,000. They've got Spurs this coming game week. Then it's Wolves and Burnley. He's absolutely fine to keep hold of. But he's not going to be hurting you too much now if he does well because he's lower owned. And then the second page of defenders, none of these should hurt you if they do well and you don't own them. Burn is expected to do quite well this game week because he's a big chap. He'd be good for corners. They're playing West Ham. West Ham are woeful at the moment of defending against set pieces. So there's quite a few managers are expecting he's got a reasonable chance of getting an attacking return this game week. And of course he could get a clean sheet. I wouldn't be bringing him in, but if you've got him, he's a very good player to have. Estevez, he was supposed to be bench fodder. I was supposed to make him grey. He's just bench fodder, but if you have to play him sometime, that's okay. Muklele, bench fodder, but Sunderland defensively are good. Rodon, bench fodder. Goodmanson, bench fodder. Don't go buying him because he's flagged. He may play, we don't know. He went off after 30 minutes. But those last 4 are just bench fodder. But it's very useful having bench fodder players because it frees up money for other things. Regarding midfielders, so Semenyo, the highest owned midfielder by far. He's even gone up a bit, even though they're away to Man City this game week. Some managers will bench him, some will be selling him, and they're probably going to be all right. But if he does well, that's going to be massive regret for them. The safe thing to do is to play him, but it means you're not playing someone else who's got a chance of doing well. But he's away to Man City, but he is a good player and he's absolutely worth having. If you're wildcarding, you really should be getting Semenyo. So Kudos is a good player. He's been dumped by net of 123,000 so far. So maybe the next 2 or 3 game weeks, if he does nothing, then he'll be way down the list. But at the moment, you're kind of a bit obliged to play him just to protect yourself. He's home to Chelsea. Spurs and Chelsea, they're not best friends. Could be a feisty game. Would be very interesting. Saka, he's only up by 49,000. It's because he's 10 million and quite a few managers are going for 2 or 3 Arsenal players at the back, and there are plenty of other midfielders and forwards that are quite good. However, by my reckoning, he is the midfielder that's going to do the 3rd most damage. A very good player to have. If you're wildcarding, you want to bring him in, that's fine. If you've got him, he's a great player. So Rangers of Man City, he's been dumped by over 212,000 so far. I would like to move him on, definitely. There's lots of midfielders I'd rather own, but his ownership is still high enough that if he does well, it's going to hurt me. They're at home to Bournemouth this game week. So there's a chance, obviously there's a chance. There's a reasonable chance he's going to do all right. And he was played out of position last game week as a defending midfielder. But that just goes to show how much Pep actually wants him to be starting and being on the pitch. I wish he was much lower owned so I could dump him with a clear conscience. But because what I'm trying this season is, as much as possible, just be playing the popular players, I've kind of got to keep him at the moment. I can't promise I won't dump him. And it may be when we get to Saturday morning, he's been dumped by so many, I am free to sell him. But at the moment, he's way too highly owned. If I was wildcarding, there's no way I'd be buying him. If you want to sell him to get somebody who's likely to score more points, that is absolutely fine. Bremo, he's probably the midfielder I'd most like to have. He's got returns, I think, the last 3 game weeks. I think he got voted by the Telegraph the best transfer over the summer recently. 8.2 million, absolutely worth having. Now, I can bring him in. I can swap him for Reinders, need to do another transfer. But he's currently lower owned than Reinders, and I'd have to get rid of a popular player like João Pedro, which is, again, risky because it goes against what I'm trying to do this season. But he is going to be probably the 3rd or 2nd most highly owned midfielder next game week. If you're wildcarding, definitely get Bremo. If you want to bring Bremo in, even if it's selling someone popular like Reinders or Kudos, I think that's okay. It's safe to do. I wouldn't sell Saka for him, but if you can get Bremo, I wouldn't even sell Semenyo, even though Bremo should outscore him this coming game week, because Semenyo is so highly owned, it's just too dangerous. So Fernandes, he's down by 32,000, more expensive than Bremo, perfectly good player, will get points whenever he gets an attacking return. He gets 2 or 3 bonus points as well, but he's 8.9 million. So if you can only have one of Bremo or Fernandes, of course you'd go Bremo. But if you've got Fernandes, he's fine to have. I wouldn't switch him to Bremo unless you've got like 3, 4, 5 free transfers, or you're doing it to free up money for another move you need to do. And Dyer, so he's flat. He's a very good player. No transfers in or out net-wise. The issue with Ndaya, who's a very good player, is Everton don't seem to have a good forward at the moment that he can pass the ball to. So if they had a good striker, Ndaya would be getting probably lots of assists. But until Everton sort that out, he's a good player. He's a good player and he's all right for FPL. If I had him, I'd be very comfortable having him because he's quite highly owned. I wouldn't be bringing him in though. And then Gakpo, net of down by 8,000 so far this game week. He got subbed off. I wouldn't be bringing him in, but it may be from game week 12 he'd be popular. If you've got him, you want to keep him, that's okay. The reason not to would be there are other midfielders that are a lot more popular and they're going to do you damage. If you've not got Gakpo, he's not going to be hurting your rank. None of these midfielders now are going to hurt your rank if you don't own them. Enzo, so 2 game weeks ago, content creators were raving on about him, and he is a good player to have, but he has blanked the last 2 game weeks. He's net down by 41,000, And it just goes to show, if you look back through videos, how much the flavour of the week often doesn't perform. So I absolutely would not be selling him. I would be comfortable buying him. He's only 6.7 million. But at the moment, he's not going to be hurting you if he does well and you don't own him. But after Tottenham, they've got Wolves and Burnley. He's actually a good player to have. And then Caicedo, he's only 5.9. Expected to score lower than Enzo. He's fine to have, though. Bit of an enabler almost at 5.9. He's up by 14,000, possibly because of the price. So if your 5 midfielders are like Semenyo, Saka and Bremo, Enzo and Caicedo, for example, I think that's an amazing midfield. Slightly exposed because of Kudos and Rangers, but they're not expected to do that well over the next couple of game weeks. And then second page of midfielders, again, none of these are going to hurt you if they do well this game week. The first one is Salah. He's been dumped by nearly 200,000 net. He is a good player. Yes, he's been underperforming a lot. From game week 12, managers will be probably bringing him in, assuming he's still fit and available. He got a very good goal last game week, but it's only worth as many points as a rubbish goal. But it was a good goal. I wouldn't be bringing him in because he's 14.3 million. I wouldn't be getting him on a wild card. And if I had him, reality is I'd be selling him, I think, for one of the more popular midfielders who's going to do well. I think I'd definitely be selling him. But if you want to be holding on to him, that's all right. Eze's a good midfielder. Net 41,000 in because he scored a very good goal last game week. But there are 3 other Arsenal players that I would be choosing above him. Sarr, he's also up by 41,000. Now the prediction sites generally are expecting him to outscore Mateta. Mateta's the forward, Sarr's the midfielder that does a lot of the work. He is a good player, 6.5 million. His popularity is likely to grow. Palace are reckoned to have good fixtures coming up. Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, United. Then Grealish, he's down by 39,000. The fixtures are right. Sunderland, if you have him, you don't need to be desperate to get rid of him. But he is more expensive than Sarr, so him to Sarr, that's a perfectly reasonable move. Rice, I like Rice. He's up by 123,000. He just ticks along nicely. Gets decent-ish points. 5, 6, 7 points isn't unusual for him. But he's not going to hurt you if you don't own him. I would personally rather have Rice to Eze. And then King, he's in here as bench fodder, 4.5 million. You're really going to play him. But he tends to play, so if he does come in for you, you should get 1 or 2 points. He's been slightly sold, 4,000. And then forwards, as we saw earlier, Haaland, basically 100% owned, and yet there's still over 100,000 managers have brought him in this game week. You have to have him. Unless you're playing some sort of game with your friends where you've said you're not going to buy him, you kind of have to have him. Now, he blanked. If he blanks the next 2 or 3 game weeks, people will start to get cold feet because managers are fickle and they'll be selling him. But at the moment, you kind of have to have him. João Pedro's been dumped by a net of nearly 600,000 so far this game week. He's done nothing for a while. Spurs next game week, then Wolves and Burnley. I wouldn't be surprised if his dumping goes as high as like 1 million by the time the game week starts. People would be selling him to get Mateta. That's an easy move to do. Absolutely worth doing. The only reason to keep him really at the moment is he is highly owned. He realistically may get some returns, in which case he is going to hurt the managers that don't own him. So Voltemida has been brought in by 171,000. More often than not, he scores a goal. People are expecting him to get an attacking return against West Ham this game week, albeit away. He is a forward that is absolutely worth having. There's nobody I'd be selling him for at the moment. But there is temptation with all the online noise of buying, for example, Mateta rather than him if you have neither. And it's perfectly feasible that Mateta will outscore him in the next few game weeks. Gyökeres, so he's 9 million, so that is quite expensive for the forwards that are out there that are worth having. He's been sold by a net of 60,000. But the next game is away to Burnley. Burnley defensively aren't great. There's a reasonably good chance Gyökeres to get 1 or 2 attacking returns in that. But if you want to be selling him, for example, for Mateta, that's okay. I've got him. I'm probably going to keep him, but I need to see what happens, movement in the market between now and the end of the week, the start of the game week. But I'm not worried about having him at all. If he does well, he won't massively hurt you this game week. Then Mateta been brought in for 340,000 net so far. That's going to increase a fair bit between now and the start of the game week. I suspect next game week's video he'll be in the top 3, assuming he doesn't get injured, of course. Absolutely worth having. If you're wildcarding, you want to bring him in. If using transfers, free transfers to bring him in, perfectly reasonable thing to do. Then Thiago, he's up by 218,000, partly because he is the main target man for Brentford and he is scoring, but also he's only 6.2 million. So there'll be plenty of managers selling maybe João Pedro and Goalkeepers for Mateta and Thiago. Then that gives them enough money to get maybe Saka or Gabriel if they don't have Gabriel, or maybe Mbeumo in midfield. So he is being bought by a lot, but he will be on the bench, I suspect, for people quite often. 6.2 million. Bowen, good player, had an assist, nearly had a very nice goal at the weekend. The only problem with Bowen, and it is the only problem, is he plays for West Ham, and West Ham are so bad at the moment. So he's been dumped by a net of 40,000. Don't think there's any scenario where I'd be buying him. If I had him, he's all right to hold at the moment, but you may want to be thinking, can I move him on? A lot of owners of Burn will be moving him to Mateta this game week, I suspect, or Voltemade. Ekiteke, so Solio Analytics have only given him expected points of 2.8, but if he plays, he might do quite well. By game week 12, people will be bringing him in. A reason not to have him really is it's easy to get 3 better forwards, and he's 8.6 million, so he's fine to be selling. If you need to hold on to him for a bit longer, that's fine. There's no scenario where I'd be buying him at the moment. Then Welbeck, he's got quite a few goals recently. He does play for Brighton. He is old, but that isn't a reason not to have him because he's performing well. Next set of fixtures, Leeds, Palace, Brentford, Forest. That's okay. He's been brought in by 178,000, cost 6.4. He's not going to hurt your rank at the moment if he does well, but if he keeps scoring, his ownership would just keep going up. Mark Gahey, bench fodder, does take up a Chelsea slot, but he's only 4.2 million and he often gets 1 point, maybe sometimes 2. One of these days he's going to get a goal. But Chelsea players generally are being sold, so you probably can afford to have him. If you were wildcarding and he was your third forward that's going to sit on the bench, that's probably okay. Now going to look at my suggested benching order. As always, you do whatever you like. This is just my preferred benching order. Starting with the keepers, if you've got Raya, of course you're going to play him away to Burnley. Then my choice would be Pope, Donnarumma, Roofs, Pickford, Vicario, Kelleher, Sanchez, and then Dubravka at home to Arsenal. I prefer to Petrovic away to Man City. So unless you've got Petrovic, Dubravka is likely to be the keeper on your bench. And now the other players, I've taken 6 players to one side who we're going to look at for potential captaincy. So if you've got any of those, of course you're playing those. Apart from that, I know this order will be different to any other content creator's benching order, because I've got Semenyo right near the top on this page, of course. But that's because he's so highly owned. If you decide to bench him because he's away to Man City and then he gets an attacking return, which is absolutely feasible, that is going to hurt your rank. Then Gyökeres, Mbeumo, very good. Fernandes, Munoz, João Pedro, Timber, Sarr, Rice, Eze, Gakpo, Ekiteke, Bowen, Kudos, Ndaya, Reindeers, Calafiori, Enzo, Caicedo, Byrne, Gahey, Van de Ven, Virgil van Dijk, who's a long way down now, Mukulele, Grealish, Thiago, Senesi. Then we have Cucurella, Pedro Porro, Welbeck, King, Rodon, Electric Steve, Goodmanson, Mark Gahey. Regarding captaincy, Haaland, I suspect, will be the most captained. He's certainly going to be the safest captain. I would suspect he's not going to be the highest scorer this game week, but it's going to be very difficult to choose who is. If you don't captain Haaland, every point he gets is going to be a negative for you, and you are taking a risk. And then Gabriel, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of chat online about people saying they're going to captain him. Personally, I think most of them are going to bottle it, but that would be because they're pretty confident Arsenal are going to keep a clean sheet against Burnley, so he's already on 6 points. And he's got a reasonable chance of attacking returns from a set piece. So he's now up to like 12 points, let's say. And he's going to be getting bonus points. It's absolutely feasible Gabriel's going to get a double-digit return this game week. But if he doesn't and Haaland does anything, that is a huge negative. If Gabriel does get a return, the captaincy is not going to hurt those who don't captain him because he's just not going to be captained by enough people. And then we have Saka. He's a sensible choice. He's more sensible than Gabriel, but Gabriel's potentially a bit more fun. Salah's all right, but of course very lowly owned. Then Mateta's a fine choice. Ultimately, any of these are fine for captain, really. Any are fine for vice captain. Haaland's the safest. Don't choose two from the same team, so don't do Gabriel and Saka as captain, vice captain, just in case the game, for whatever reasons, gets postponed. There we have it. That's my thoughts for Game Week 10 and the players that are being hyped up at the moment or are already popular. Obviously, any questions, I will try to answer them before the deadline. I do tend to be biased towards the popular players because they're the ones that are going to hurt you if you don't own them. But I may also say player A, I think, will score more than player B, but player B is the safer pick, that sort of thing. Anyway, I hope you have a fun Game Week 10. Thank you very much for watching if you got this far. Bye.